My Strategic Plan, Strategy Huddle, Innovation Strategies, Part 1.
Innovation strategies, they're the name of the game. That's what we say. How do we really do this? Let's look at what they actually are. And this is, of course, built from perhaps the easiest to the most to the hardest, or the hardest to implement. Let's just call it that. So we're going to talk about the shallow dive ones of being business process and technology together. So those are lumping into a cost innovation discussion, and then product service innovation, moving up the pyramid to business model innovation, and then a big kahuna around behavioral innovation. So a lot of debate in some of these areas, and again, our intention is just to frame it out, to have you have a structure, go back to your organization, say, yeah, what are we really, when we talk about innovation, what are we really talking about? How extensive is this for us? And I don't want to undershadow the fact that, cost innovation, product service innovation, those in and of themselves are certainly significant enough to bring to market and add value to organizations in and of themselves. But the point, of course, here is to try to say, well, let's not mix them up. Let's be really clear about the type of innovation, or a combination of. And they're not always necessarily all that cut and dry either, so I just want to share that as well. So, there's definitely overlap here too. So let's jump in, digging a little bit deeper into the statistics there. What types of innovation are organizations pursuing, and Howard's going to talk to us about that.
Well, as we look at the McKinsey study, and again, just because it's a couple of years old, I really don't think it's any less representative of what's going on today. And I'm quite sure all of us can get our arms around the number one innovation that organizations pursue, product innovation, because a lot of times what we're just dealing there is a product extension, taking something we really have and add on to it and so forth. And similarly with service, when we start getting on into process and business model, we're talking about some serious changes and so forth, which we're going to dig into. But the point I really want us to take away from this one, and I found with a lot of the reading, whether it was an HBR or a couple Accenture articles on this, is that organizations have a difficult time assessing innovation. They have a difficult time assessing how to carry it through, and they also have a difficult time assessing the benefits from it. We're making this investment, whatever it might be, so what's the return for us? And so you can see the comparison between the two. The product innovation is a whole bunch easier to measure. There's only a difference of 17 points. When we get down into service, okay, so we're going to do some service innovation. How the heck do we measure this thing that we're bringing into? And you see there's a 28-point difference between the two. So our recommendation, and from what I've seen from going through this, is when we start pursuing innovation, let's try to figure out how we're going to measure it, because it's going to be so much more effective, Erica, when we do this. So let's look at probably one of the easier ones, the technology and business process innovation, and we could probably measure that one a little bit easier. But again, let's get our arms around it.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's jump into the first set of shallow dive strategies, which is business process and technology innovation. And the fact that we're just scratching the surface on some of these items, and how you apply this in your organization is really really we'll need a deeper dive. So one of the things that we know, and we're gonna sort of change the language on this right now, from thinking about technology and business process innovation to really cost innovation. So we're doing these most of the time, these types of actions, and we may or may not consider them innovative per se, but we're forcing these actions because of the economic climate we find ourselves in, also from the need to tap into developing markets and those requiring a different cost structure. So one of the things that's forcing this, and we've all been listening to the news about this, of course, is that consumer spending is rapidly declining. Okay, fine. So we know that. Moving on to what we're seeing in organizations, and what I'm sure you're all seeing in your organization, is how do we do things for less money and maintain the value that we're providing to our customers? And the point related to this is how do we do this without gutting the organization? And again, of course, maintaining the value proposition, and then some right? And then some. There's a lot of organizations that we're working with that not only have to figure out how to improve margins, get rid of the fat and the cost, as well as increase the value and the value creation to customers in order to maintain their market position. So, Howard, do you want to talk us through this? I know you're really passionate about what this economic environment's doing to companies and governments, frankly. So,
yeah. Well, again, we speak from the capital of high unemployment of the United States, where people are chopping left and right. So, and we all know that to play the game anymore, it's about value. That's you have to have that. We can't even enter into the game. So, it is a strategic imperative. So we found when we first went into this downturn and so forth, I kind of look at the top part of what everybody's doing. We're finding cost cutting. That's kind of me, like that's a top-down thing. That's, let's just start chopping a percentage of this, a percentage of that. The budget's back 5%. Send it around. How are you going to do? That's kind of what happens. And one of the things we can eliminate, and we're seeing, that's the top two things we're seeing here is people are marketing budget is being whacked, and as well as there's another obvious thing here is you can cut back on your 401k contributions. I've got my own little bugaboo about the marketing budget because I think people should increase it now because you can get your message told a little bit more. But since we're going to probably be in a protracted downturn, what we really need to do is what everyone needs to be doing is the bottom up. Let's really go on and assess what we're doing and get a team together and look at that so we can cut the cost out but still maintain the value. The perspective I want to throw at that is reading two places, both OECD and there's a HBR article, Harvard Business Review article out this month, when they're estimating within the next decade, next 10 years, India and China will have 2 to 3 billion, B as in billion, middle-class consumers. Okay? That does not mean that the middle class in China equates to middle class here in the U.S., but it's going to middle class there. So we've got to determine how we can serve them with value. We can't serve them with the same program we have. So we got to go back in, get the fat out, look at it, return the value, and keep the cost down. I mean, that's a huge market to even. I mean, can't get my arms around 2 or 3 billion more middle class. So there's going to be something there, but how are we going to do it? So we've got to be innovative on how we're going to cut these costs but still provide value.
So one example that I wanted to throw into this conversation before we move on is an organization that we're working with, and they haven't had an innovation strategy in place like everybody does, and innovation is related to bubbling good ideas up from the bottom and putting them on a website and then evaluating them, and then it goes into some pipeline, and it either produces more products or more services based on some evaluation method. And we'll talk about that in the next slide set. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's fine. Well, one of their larger customers came back to them 12 months ago and said, okay, love you guys, great, but we're taking your service out to RFP. You got to put in for the business just like everybody else does. There's some competitors out there that are doing it cheaper, better, faster, and this is a service organization, and we think that you need to decide whether you can as well. And so related to trying to maintain that business is, of course, the customer forcing the cost, or in this case now cost innovation, and the solution to that, of course, is the flip side, which we've been talking about, which is the modifying the business processes and being sort of crass about it, replacing headcount with technology. In this organization, that was what it was taking to drive the cost down. And if we look at most P&Ls, I would suspect that the majority of, especially, I'm thinking about the service business for right now, but service business, government, good example, is in headcount, it's in payroll. So a lot of the innovations need to come from how do we do things more efficiently, which again is, that sounds like boiling the ocean most of the time, and how do we leverage technology, which is an expense, but it should, of course, if we're offsetting, unfortunately,